You need to hear this clearly. Forget fasting, forget starving yourself, forget punishing your body with hunger, irritation, and exhaustion while the scale refuses to move. You have been sold a lie that to lose fat and get healthy, you must eat less. That is not true. The real enemy is not the calories on your plate. The real enemy is insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is a silent but ruthless biological disorder. It locks your fat cells and throws away the key. In this state, fat is not allowed to leave storage and be used as energy. You can eat very little, even starve yourself, and the fat will still not move. At that point, weight loss is no longer about willpower. It becomes biologically impossible. If you feel drained and sluggish after meals, if belly fat refuses to bud no matter what you try, if late-night cravings feel completely out of control, this is not because you are weak. It is because insulin is hijacking your brain and your fat tissue. It is commanding your body to store, not burn. Here is the part most people are never told. When insulin stays chronically high, your body is blocked from burning fat. You are trapped inside a metabolic cage. Every time you eat the wrong way, every time you slash calories blindly, that cage tightens. The harder you try, the more you fail. But there is another truth, and it is uncomfortable for many to accept. Modern science shows that you do not need to eat less to lose fat. You need to eat differently. When the way you eat changes, your biology changes. Research demonstrates that simply changing how you eat can reduce blood sugar responses by over 30%. Even without changing a single food item on your plate. That means the insulin barrier can be lowered. And when insulin drops, fat is finally allowed to leave storage. This is not motivation. This is physiology. When insulin is controlled, your body stops hoarding energy and starts releasing it. You are no longer fighting yourself. You are no longer forced to live in hunger just to see temporary results that always come back. From here, I will walk you through a 5-step biological protocol. Not to make you suffer, but to reset your metabolism, from the easiest changes to the foundational step that determines everything. If you miss this, you will repeat the same mistakes year after year, wondering why you tried so hard and still never changed. If you are skipping this step, you are making things harder for yourself. This is the easiest intervention, yet it is the one most people underestimate. Not a drug, not an expensive supplement, it is apple cider vinegar. If you think this is just a folk remedy, you are completely wrong. When you eat bad rice, pasta, or potatoes, your body immediately activates an enzyme called alpha amylase to break starch down into sugar. That sugar rushes into your bloodstream, insulin spikes, fat gets locked away. Is the familiar pattern that leaves you tired after meals and gradually gaining fat. Acetic acid in vinegar does one very specific thing. It slows down alpha amylase. Think of it as a speed bump in your digestive tract. When the enzyme is slowed, starch is no longer torn apart into sugar within minutes. Sugar enters your bloodstream gradually, not as a flood. Insulin no longer has a reason to explode. The data here is not vague. A meta-analysis of clinical trials shows that consuming vinegar before a meal can significantly reduce post-meal glucose spikes. One specific study found that just 2 tablespoons of vinegar before a high-carbohydrate meal improved insulin sensitivity by 19% to 34%. That means that 1/3 of the insulin response is simply gone from a C drink, and it goes further. A study published in Diabetes Care showed that taking vinegar before bed reduced morning blood sugar by 4%, and in people with the highest baseline levels, the reduction reached 6%. This tells you something critical. Acetic acid is not only working in the gut, it is also interfering with the liver overnight glucose production. If you wake up with high blood sugar, your liver is working against you. Vinegar helps shut that down, but this must be done correct. You must never drink it straight. The acid will damage tooth enamel and irritate your throat. The required protocol is 1-2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar mixed into a large glass of water, taken 10-20 minutes before your main meal, usually lunch or dinner. The vinegar must be raw, unfiltered, with the mother. Do not fool yourself with vinegar gummies loaded with sugar. Those destroy the entire purpose. Here is the danger of ignoring this step. Every meal continues to trigger a sharp glucose spike, and every spike adds another lock to your fat stores. This intervention requires no willpower, but if you refuse to do it, you are actively allowing insulin to stay in control of your body. We have now used chemistry to flatten the glucose spike. The next step is to use your own muscle tissue to pull sugar out of the blood immediately, before insulin even has a chance to take over. If you finish eating and then sit down, you are actively pushing sugar straight into your bloodstream and into fat storage. This is a common habit, but the consequences are serious. When you sit after a meal, your muscles shut down. Glucose from the food has nowhere to go. Your pancreas is then forced to scream for insulin to shove that sugar into fat cells. Every meal like this adds another lock to your fat stores. You need to understand this clearly. Your muscles can absorb glucose without insulin. When you contract your muscles, especially the large muscles in your legs, they open an alternative pathway for glucose to enter the cells. This pathway bypasses insulin resistance completely. That means even when insulin is not working properly, your muscles can still pull sugar out of the blood and burn it for energy. Timing is everything. Blood glucose rises most aggressively 30 to 60 minutes after you eat. If you remain sedentary during this window, insulin does its job in the worst possible way, storage. But if you eat at the right time, you stop the glucose spike at the source. A study from New Zealand showed that a 10-minute walk after each meal was significantly more effective at lowering blood sugar than a feigned 30-minute walk performed at a random time of day. It is not the total amount of exercise that matters, it is the timing. You do not need intense workouts. In fact, high-intensity exercise immediately after eating can cause digestive stress and spike stress hormones. What you need is low-level steady movement. A brisk 10-minute walk is the gold standard. If you cannot go outside, climbing stairs, doing bodyweight squats, or simply walking in place is enough. The goal is to activate the large muscle groups, quadriceps, hamstrings, and glutes. These are the most glucose-hungry tissues in your body. When these muscles are active, they mechanically pull sugar out of your blood. Glucose does not have time to trigger a massive insulin release. Your energy stays stable. The heavy, sluggish post-meal fatigue disappears. You are no longer paying for your meals with fat storage. You are paying for them with movement. If you make walking after meals a non-negotiable habit, your average daily blood glucose will drop dramatically. And when insulin comes due, your body is finally allowed to unlock fat stores and use them for energy. This is not a small trick. This is a foundational biological mechanism that most people ignore. You can comment your age or simply leave the number 1 if this topic applies to you. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming videos, and share this video if you truly found it helpful. You can eat the right foods, but if you eat them in the wrong order, insulin will still explode. This is something most people completely ignore. They obsess over what is on the plate, but they do not realize that the order you put food into your mouth can determine whether you burn fat or store fat during that very meal. Look directly at the common habit, starting a meal with bread, white rice, French fries, or fruit juice. When carbohydrates hit an empty stomach, there is nothing to slow them down. They rush straight into the small intestine, broken down rapidly, send blood sugar soaring, insulin is forced to surge. Fat gets locked away. 2 hours later, blood sugar crashes and you are hungry again. They rush straight into the small intestine, broken down rapidly, send blood sugar soaring, insulin is forced to surge. Fat gets locked away. 2 hours later, blood sugar crashes and you are hungry again. Where's the insulin resistance loop? This is not opinion. This is data. A study from Weill Cornell Medicine had participants eat the same meal, vegetables, protein, and carbohydrates on 2 different days. On the day they ate carbohydrates first, blood sugar spiked sharply. On the day they ate vegetables and protein-fed carbohydrates last, the blood sugar peak dropped by over 37%, and insulin secretion dropped significantly as well. Simply changing the order produced an effect comparable to medication. The mechanism is simple and brutal. When you eat vegetables first, the fiber move into the stomach and upper intestine and forms a viscous mesh. Fist an effect comparable to medication. The mechanism is simple and brutal. When you eat vegetables first, the fiber move into the stomach and upper intestine and forms a viscous mesh. This basically slows glucose absorption. When you eat protein next, gastric emptying slows even further. By the time you finally eat rice, bread, or potatoes, those carbohydrates land on top of a slowed digestive system. Sugar no longer floods your blood, it leaks in gradually. Insulin has no reason to spike. The rule is non-negotiable: vegetables first, protein and fats second. Starches last. No mixing, no rushing. If you reverse this order, you actively trigger the insulin spike you were trying to avoid. When you eat it the correct sequence, two things happen. First, you feel full sooner and naturally eat less starch without effort. Second, the starch you eat is biologically controlled. You do not need to refuse social meals or explain yourself. At any restaurant, at any table, rule is the same: eat the vegetables first. If you keep ignoring food every meal remains a glucose shock. Every shock pushes you further away from unlocking fat. This is not a small trick. This is the architecture of the meal. And if the architecture is wrong, everything built on top of it collapses. If you are sleeping 5 or 6 hours a night and still expecting to control blood sugar or lose fat, you are lying to yourself. You can eat perfectly, cut carbs, and follow every other step, but sleep deprivation will destroy all of it. Sleep is not optional. It is the biological foundation of insulin function. When you do not sleep enough, your body interprets this as an emergency. Your adrenal glands immediately release cortisol, the stress hormone. Cortisol has one primary job: push glucose into the bloodstream, so you are ready to fight or run. Today, we're talking about naturally reversing gray hair using targeted nutritional strategies that work. And I'm not discussing expensive salon treatments or permanent chemical dyes that damage scalp. I'm talking about cellular restoration using specific nutrients that activate your dormant pigment factories. Most doctors won't tell you about this because there's absolutely no profit in it. Big Pharma makes billions from you accepting aging as inevitable and purchasing their products. Your body forgets how to burn fat and becomes addicted to sugar. Your brain is pulled into this as well. With sleep deprivation, activity in the prefrontal cortex, the center of logic and self-control, drops. Meanwhile, the amygdala, the emotional and reward center, becomes hyperactive. The result is brutal. You are biologically programmed to crave sugar and high-calorie foods, especially at night. This is not weakness, this is physiology. If you think you can fix this with coffee, you are digging the hole deeper. Caffeine stays in your system far longer than you think. Drinking coffee in the afternoon means your brain cannot enter deep restorative sleep at night. You think you are sleeping, but your metabolism is not being repaired. To escape this cycle, you must reset your circadian rhythm. Morning sunlight is the signal that sets your internal clock. Miss it, and melatonin release at night becomes chaotic. Caffeine must be cut by midday. At night, your body can fall asleep when core temperature drops by about 2-3 FFE. A cool bedroom or a hot shower before bed to trigger rapid cooling is not optional. If you continue to ignore sleep, cortisol will remain elevated. When cortisol is high, insulin cannot function properly. Fat will never be unlocked. This is not gentle advice. This is a warning. Sleep out of rhythm and you are actively destroying your metabolism, no matter how perfect your diet looks. If you start your morning with bread, cereal, oatmeal, or fruit juice, you are damaging your metabolism from the very first minutes of the day. This is not a small detail. This is a foundational mistake that sends your insulin out of control for hours. Morning carbohydrates create a predictable disaster. Blood sugar spikes immediately after you wake up. Insulin surges to clean it up. 2 hours later, blood sugar crashes. You feel tired, irritable, and desperate for sugar. From that point on, your entire day becomes a non-stop roller coaster of glucose spikes and crashes. You think you lack willpower, but the truth is simple. You vet the wrong biological anchor at breakfast. A high-protein breakfast stops this cycle. Before it starts, when you consume 30 to 50 grams of protein in the morning, your body responds in a completely different way. Protein digests slowly. It has a high thermic effect, meaning your body burns more calories just to process it. But the real power is hormonal. Protein stimulates PYY and GLP-1, the same satiety hormones that modern weight loss drugs try to imitate. You can activate them with real food. Brain imaging studies show a clear difference. People who eat a high-protein breakfast have dramatically lower brain reactivity to junk food. Their reward centers do not light up when they see sweets or fast food. In contrast, people who skip breakfast or eat carb-heavy mornings become obsessed with food all day. Protein also suppresses ghrelin, hunger hormone, far more effectively and for longer. It is the second meal effect. What you eat at 8 a.m. determines what you crave at 8 p.m. The rule here is non-negotiable: at least 30 grams of protein within 1 hour of waking. One egg is not enough. Coffee is not enough. You must combine protein sources. Eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, whey isolate, or even leftover meat from dinner all count. There is no rule that meat cannot be breakfast. The only thing that is forbidden is naked carbohydrates: toast, juice, bananas. When you anchor your morning with protein, baseline insulin stays low. Muscle is protected, and muscle is your primary metabolic organ. Lose muscle and your metabolism collapses. Insulin resistance worsens. But when protein is prioritized first thing in the morning, you force your body to burn fat for fuel. If you ignore this step, the other 4 steps barely matter. But if you get the protein anchor right, your entire metabolic system for the day is reset in the correct direction. This is not a breakfast tip. This is the foundation. If you eye just one step and wait for a miracle, you will be disappointed. Insulin resistance does not collapse from a seed trick. It only collapses when you attack it from multiple biological angles at the same time. This is where most people fail. They do it halfway. The body never responds to halfway effort. Let be decked. Insulin is the fat storage hormone. When insulin stays high, fat stays locked. When insulin is systematically lowered, fat is forced to be released. There is no debate here, no opinions. This is biology. The 5 steps you just learned do not work in isolation. They are interconnected. A high-protein breakfast sets your baseline insulin for the entire day. Proper sleep lowers cortisol and restores insulin control. Food sequencing flattens glucose spikes. Post-meal movement pulls sugar out of the blood before insulin can react. And acetic acid interferes directly with digestion and liver glucose output. Each step attacks a different link in the fat storage chain. When you use this correctly, everything begins to shift. Insulin no longer stays chronically elevated, glucose peaks are lower, cravings fade, energy stabilizes. And most importantly, your body is finally allowed to burn fat, not because you tried harder, but because the biological barrier has been removed. You do not need to starve, you do not need to suffer, you do not need to punish yourself to lose a few pounds only to gain them back. When the biological signals are correct, the body self-corrects. Fat leaves storage as a natural consequence. That is why people who implement all 5 steps stop fighting themselves every day. If you remember only one thing, remember this: fat does not disappear because you suffer more. It disappears because insulin comes down. Insulin only comes down when you attack it strategically from every direction. If you found this content helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue following future insights. Every subscription motivates us to keep sharing more valuable content. And it would be amazing if you shared this video because it might truly help a friend or family member who needs it.